Great. Okay, so as I said, yeah, you can take part in the surveys at future occasions and whenever you like. And you can, of course, involve other people in going to do the surveys with you, or you can do them by yourselves, whichever suits you and whatever works for your site. So I'm going to try and share a couple of slides now to give you a bit of background.
Could someone mute their you know, because there's a lot of background noise.
Yes, there's a TV or a radio in the background. Okay, thank you. That sounds much better. So for Biodiversity Week, you may have seen on our portal, has everyone had a look at the Tony Forest portal online? And on the main public parts of the website, you can actually view this map as an interactive map of all the forests. And if you click on the little tree sign, you can go into those profiles. And for Biodiversity Week, we are going to make a link available to the survey specifically for biodiversity just on the profile page. So if you want to share that with anyone who wants to take part during Biodiversity Week and in future, you can share that link with them. So that'll be really easy to access. The methodology is also available all on the website. I'll show you the link to that. And then the other ways we are carrying out monitoring throughout the season is we're going to be running science days where Earthwatch staff and partner staff are actually going to be present at forests to help run through activities. A lot of these activities will be with specific groups, so a school group may be coming and there'll be community sessions as well. So you should be able to find out about all of these activities on the website. So I'm going to just try to get to the portal now for you. So can you see the portal here now in front of you? So if you were, for instance, your forest was Avenue End in Glasgow and you'd clicked through from the map, you would see this list of menu items on the left-hand side. And the key one you want here, can you see this on the screen or is it too small? Because my big screen. Is that better? The left-hand side link, which says take a survey, will give you a link here and a QR code, which takes you directly to the surveys that you will be involved in taking and collecting data on. And once you've gone into there, you get a list of all the surveys that are going to be available to you for your site. And these surveys are linked directly to your site. So for Biodiversity Week, the only surveys we want you to focus on are these ones down here in butterflies, ground dwellers and pollinators. These are our three topics that are available to focus on for Biodiversity Week. So each of these will take you in and take you through the steps. If I click, sorry, I'm trying to find the right meeting controls. In your profile as well for Glasgow, for instance, can you see the open access survey screen at the moment? Yeah. At the bottom here, you've got resources. The bottom of that list, and in the resources, you've got the monitoring survey guides. So whatever you need to check up on the methods that you're going to be using, all of the detail that you need is in there for each of the topics. And we would strongly encourage you collect the data on a mobile phone or a tablet when you're in the field, but if you are unable to do so and you need to use paper copies, then we also have monitoring data sheets here as well, where you can fill the data in on paper while you're in the field, and then return when you come back, fill it in online afterwards. So all the resources that you need are in the resources section for each tiny forest profile. Okay. So what I might do now is just, if anyone's got any questions about accessing things, otherwise I might just take you through the different biodiversity surveys on the portal here and explain to you what you need to do. Does that sound okay? If I swap pages like that, can you see? Have you now got the list? Yeah. Just checking what it shows you. So if I go to the resources in this page, for instance. So hopefully you can see a guide here about butterflies. PDF on the screen, which takes you through step by step all of the information that you need for the different biodiversity butterfly surveys. So we actually have 2 butterfly surveys that are available to you to carry out in your tiny forest. And the reason for that is that obviously butterflies are a really mobile species, and they vary quite a lot in what's available, what's active at different times of day, or on different sites, or on different times of the year as well. And so we have a timed count, which is one where you spend a set period of time, 15 minutes, I'll go into the detail again when I go through it, to count the number of different species that you see while you're sitting quietly watching the tiny forest for that set period of time. The other survey we have is more of a long-running survey. So if you are at your tiny forest maybe for doing some weeding, or you're there just to spend some time or to have a coffee with a friend, and you're sat there for an hour or so, you could just record which species you see. So we're not worried about counting them all, but if you see maybe 2 or 3 different species during the time that you're there, you can record them using that survey. So that one's trying to capture and understand how many different species might be visiting the forest, whereas the timed count survey is trying to understand how many of each species might be visiting, so we can actually compare. If someone's in a tiny forest for surveying butterflies for 15 minutes, this is the kind of species that we're getting. So for the timed count survey, you click on Start Survey, and it's very, very simple. You just come in, you can pop your name in there, and really that's just for us to be able to check back. If you, after you've submitted your survey, said, oh, I completely forgot to give you that piece of information, you can tell us, and you can tell us your name, we can go back in and look at the data that's gone into the system. The date automatically fills in for the day when you've clicked on this survey. So as long as you just check that and check it's the day that you're expecting it to be. Obviously, if you go back in, if you've done it on paper and you're entering the data the day after, you want to just check that that date is the day you collected the data, not the day that you're entering the data into the portal. Now, we've defined these zones in our forest where we want to understand where in the forest people are taking part in this survey. So for this one, we want to know where you're standing in the forest. So you might be standing in the middle, right, surrounded by trees. You might be standing on the edge, which is anywhere within 2 meters of the edge of the forest. Or you might be standing in the classroom area, so you're in a bit more of an open area. You can also do this survey from outside, looking in at what butterflies you might see inside the forest. Now, obviously, butterflies are moving around, and so we want to know that the butterflies, they're actually kind of interacting with the forest. So they're actually flying over the forest. They're looking like they're wanting to, maybe using resources, flower resources in the forest themselves. So I'm going to pretend that I'm doing the survey. I'm standing right in the middle of the forest, and I'm surrounded by trees. So you can easily just click on the icon and select the area. If you clicked on another one, it'll automatically jump and remove your tick. So it'll, if you realize actually I should have put I'm on the edge, you can just change that around. Now we have a guide, a butterfly guide, that to help you identify the species. So we've decided to do the butterfly survey. We're actually asking people to take part in and actually record the species that they see, because quite a lot of people are actually really familiar with butterfly species, more so than they maybe think that they are sometimes. And if you just take a little bit of time before you start to have a look at your guide, before you set your timer going, so that you can record, you can understand what species you're likely to see in your forest. And we've used a guide from the Butterfly Conservation, which covers the kinds of species you're likely to see in urban parks and gardens. So we've also got images on the survey themselves. Some of them are kind of more photographic images, and some of them are more kind of icons. Unfortunately, to do with photo consents, we haven't got all the photos up yet, but you should be able to use these to help you identify the species that you are seeing. And basically, you can scroll through and look at all the different species you might encounter, as you can see, and then you can click on these and the maximum number that you see at any one time. So for instance, if you saw one peacock butterfly, you would click, I've seen one. If later in the survey you see 2 peacock butterflies together, then your total is 2. It's not 3, because we don't know if that first one was the same as one of the ones you saw the second time round. So you're always counting the maximum you see at any one time. Okay, so you're not totaling them up over the 15 minutes. So you might see 2 peacock butterflies and 1 small white butterfly, for instance, during your 15-minute count. So I recommend you do familiarize yourself with the species beforehand. And if you're not sure of a species that you encounter, you can pop it in the other box. So if you see something you're really not confident to assign it to any of the others, then pop it in the other box. And we know that at least you have encountered another butterfly. And if we get lots of others, and if you want to, and let us know what that species was, if you know what it is and it wasn't in our list, or if you think that you were finding it particularly difficult, then please do get in touch with us and say, oh, I found it really difficult to distinguish between the more orangey brown butterflies, and we can look at trying to help give some more tips as to how you might do that. But it's as simple as that. Once you've set your timer, you've watched for 15 minutes, you've counted the butterflies, then all it is for you is to press submit at the end here on this green button, and all the data goes directly into our system to be able to check and to be able to collate it across your tiny forest and across multiple tiny forests to understand how they're providing resources for butterflies in your area. Now, if any of you have done a butterfly survey before, this mirrors almost exactly what Butterfly Conservation do for their big butterfly count in July, August. So if any of you have done that, then this should be very familiar to you, and we're trying to make it as sort of comparable as possible. So when we've got people taking part in butterfly surveys, it's not a completely new way of doing things. So does anyone have any initial questions at this point? I'll just stop sharing for now. Someone's asked a question in the chat about, can anyone access this info? Which info are you talking about? I think it's Shiri. You're able to
sorry, yeah, I mean, just hi. Just everything, the surveys,
okay, cool. So I'm not sure if you were there when I said at the start. So have you had access to the portal before?
No, I was there. I didn't. So I'm not we have a tiny forest in our community, but I'm not a keeper.
That's fine.
So I didn't.
That's not a problem. For taking part in these surveys, you don't have to be a tree keeper, but we do need to be able to share the link with you. So if you want to register, then you can register and we can get you a login and you can access the link. But for Biodiversity Week, we will be sharing the link to all these surveys on each profile page. So you'll be able to access all of the information there. Which tiny forest is your local tiny forest, Shiri?
Barnet.
Barnet, great. So I would be able to share that link with you right now if you want, and then you can see the surveys themselves.
Okay, thank you.
In order to get to, we will have the resources on the Biodiversity Week webpage as well, as in the guides, but at the moment I don't think they're up yet. I will check that with the team, because otherwise you would need a login to get to the resources at the moment, but you'll be able to see the surveys, so I can do that now.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other people in that situation who are not currently logged in or able to access the portal? Okay, I will get that to you, Shiri, or I'll get Divya to send it. How did you get linked up to this call? I'm intrigued to know how people, different people, maybe get to know about this call and the activities.
I follow Earthwatch, and I'm the head of our local sustainability forum.
Okay.
And we're about to launch a pollinator project, so I thought I'll learn a bit about the measurement side of it and what's available and how it ties up very, very nicely with what we're trying to do.
Oh, fantastic, Sherry. That's great to hear. So yes, the pollinator survey, the wider pollinator survey, will be of interest to you as well. So I might jump straight in to the next surveys if there aren't any other questions about butterflies at the moment.
Sorry, I might well have missed it, but where do you access the paper versions?
They're in the resources section of the drop down. The left-hand menu, and there's data. I think they're called data forms.
Okay.
Yeah. Martin.
Yeah, our tiny forest is in a primary school, and I was wondering how we could engage young children in the survey, whether it's I can imagine it could get a bit messy.
we do the surveys with primary school children in a variety of ways. So the one that is the best one that works really well with the younger primary school children is the ground dwellers survey. Okay, which is where we've got the tiles on the ground and we lift them up. So I'll go through that one before the end of the meeting, because that one is quite obviously you can take a photo very rapidly of what's under the tile as well and look at that with the kids to talk to them about the different species that they're seeing. Whereas obviously with butterflies, it's you'll know it's hard to point a butterfly out to a child as it flies off. We'd be very happy for you to run the activity with paper forms with the children, and then you decide whether what they've recorded is reasonable to be submitted. We have certain data validation and QC controls in behind the scenes, so we understand, as with any citizen science survey, that there'll be varying levels of data quality. So it depends slightly on how you expect the children to want to take part, and whether you do it as a group and an adult records the data, but everyone's looking for the butterflies. That's always also an opportunity. Are you a teacher yourself, or are you
teaching assistant, support staff?
So our education team would also be able to advise on that. I don't know if you've been to any of the teacher webinars that we've run, or had been linked up with those. What tiny forest are you from, Martin?
It's in Ealing. It's called Hobane.
Yeah. Okay. I can so just make sure that they're aware that that you're interested and want to take part, and if there's any extra resources that they can share with you as a school. But that's our general approach. The surveys are supposed to be accessible by everyone. How you collect the data and record it, you might want to adapt for the younger kids.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick, for letting me know. Just let Divya know if you have any problems accessing the site, the website. Cool. I will jump from butterflies. The butterfly list that I spoke about is a virtually identical layout on the form, but instead of adding the number of each one you see, you just put a tick and say, I've seen that. So for instance, when I'm there for a day doing activities with children or community groups, I'll keep a running list, maybe on the board where I am or on my phone, of any butterflies that we see during the day. And it just gives the opportunity to encounter the range of species that you might see that may be active at different times of day or different times of year. Great. So during Biodiversity Week, I'd recommend for the butterfly surveys, you know, if anyone wants to go and do them more than once, but choose a sunny day, choose a day when it's not blowing a gale and it's not raining, because you won't see many butterflies on those days. Great. Right, I'll jump back to the portal again on the screen. Let me know when you can see the portal. So we're still in the butterfly survey at the moment. I'll go back to the list of surveys and we'll go to ground dwellers, because that's a very quick one to do. So for ground dwellers and pollinators, both of these are invertebrate groups that have many, many different species in them. And identifying to species level can be really quite tricky. So we've decided to run these surveys at kind of a group level. So we're talking about bumblebees or hoverflies, not specific species of each of these groups, because it just, some of them really need experts to be able to identify them. Some of them need you to dissect the species to be able to identify them. So we obviously wanted to make it accessible, but also comparable. And actually for tiny forests, what we're interested in is the diversity of groups that are supported. And for these two groups, for ground dwellers that live in the soil and pollinators, they're also really functional groups. So it's demonstrating to us how the forest is developing. So the ground dwelling species that we want to understand, the ground dwelling invertebrates, we want to understand how those groups change as the forest gets older. As the soil gets richer, as the leaf litter grows up, we'll get different communities of these ground dwelling invertebrates living in the forest. So we've devised a guide, which is also available in the resources, to help you distinguish between some of these groups. But as you'll see in the survey, which I'll go into now, it's pretty self-explanatory. So again, you can add your name in just for reference. And I'm doing this survey today. Now, some of you may have, as tree keepers, may have seen we sent out a survey to understand about tiles in the forests. I don't know if any of you took part in that, just to understand which forest, because we do know that obviously once we put anything out in the forest, there's a chance that things go missing. So some forests, if you haven't got tiles present, unfortunately, unless we manage to arrange to get those tiles installed soon, you may not be able to do this survey, which was a shame, but we will hopefully be working to get those tiles reinstalled for you. But if they've been installed properly and they've been numbered properly, then you choose your number of the tile that you're looking at. And I'd say I'm looking at tile number 2. And then again, we've laid out the different groups that we're interested in understanding the abundance of these different groups. So we're looking at earthworms, and there's 2 different types. And actually we need to, the guide has an updated image of, I didn't realize this hasn't been updated yet, so it's good to check between the difference between a surface feeding and a soil feeding worm, just because they're different, they have different functions in the soil, they do different things. So the guide has a clear pointers how you identify the difference between those 2. And then we're interested in millipedes and centipedes, the kind of carnivorous invertebrates, ants, slugs and snails, spiders, again as a group, earwigs and other carnivorous species, beetles, ground beetles, which are the broader bodied species, any kinds of larvae, but also wood lice. And then we've also got another category as well, which again, if you want to let us know, you're finding lots of other things that we're not accounting for in our current groupings, then please let us know and we can see about adding extra groups there. So again, you're counting this time, you know, the number of individuals. Hopefully you'll get a chance to do a quick count. Some things scuttle away really fast, other things stay put. Have a look under the tile, on the underside of the tile as well, because particularly slugs and snails get stuck under the tile. So look at the ground where the tile was, but also at the underside of the tile to see if anything is living there. And most things we want you to tell us the actual number that you've counted or estimated. And I think for ants, which are the ones that are sometimes very numerous, we do this in tens rather than counting individual ants. You'll be very glad to hear, because some of our our forest last year, certainly we were using straw as a mulch layer, and we seemed to create a lot of ants' nests. They were very happy with probably the warmth created by the straw layer. I suspect the wood chip mulch that we've used this year may have a similar effect, but I suspect it won't have quite the same exactly the same insulating effect anyway. So it's interesting for us to see what lives under a straw mulch as opposed to a forest with wood chip mulch. So those are the groups that we're looking for with the ground dwellers. And as I say, kids absolutely love it and love seeing, because you get to see a lot more closely than some of the other surveys, what's living in their forest and living under the tiles, or at least taking refuge under the tiles during the surveys. So any questions on that topic? I move on to the pollinators because I'm conscious of time.
Yeah, hi. I typed a couple of questions in the chat, but
they haven't popped up on my thing yet.
No, cool. I know when you're sharing, it's hard to see it.
It is. Thanks. Go on, Daniel.
So first question was, we're quite a new forest and we don't have tiles yet.
Right.
So do we kind of have to wait our turn, or can we request?
It's up. Yes. What we've been trying to do is obviously not overwhelm people with requests for things to do. But if you're really keen and want to put some tiles in, if you'd be willing to have them delivered to you, or some way we can arrange to get some delivered either to one of your team, or I don't know where the school. Sometimes you're in. I don't know if you're associated with the school or it's just individuals. Then we could arrange with Divya to hopefully get something delivered that you could install. Obviously it's not ideal because they are quite heavy, so we'd have to consider about what your capacity to do that is. But I know some of the forests have got quite big tiles, but the size we're looking at are more like a patio, smaller patio tile, which shouldn't be too heavy. So yeah, get in touch with us if you'd like to get it. Otherwise it would depend when your science day might be, if you've got a date booked in yet for us actually to be coming to the site, and that might not be happening until later on in the year, so you'd kind of miss out on that this season, but they'd be there next season. So
yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, but
no,
I'll talk to you others.
Yeah.
The other question I had was about, I can just see two types of earthworms there, surface feeding and soil feeding, and I'm not sure about the difference.
Yes, sorry, I realised that the pictures haven't been updated in the portal yet, but it's to do with coloration and length. So the resources on the guide will help you with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Danielle.
If the our forest appears to have possibly had the tiles stolen, I have contacted Divya.
Yeah.
Would it be a possibility for us to have them delivered? Is it the same kind of thing?
Yeah. Is this very common?
I've no idea. I've never done it before, so.
No, sorry. Which is your tiny forest?
Willen Hall.
Okay, that one as well. That's a shame. Yeah. So we're exploring ways of doing it, basically, because it's all new for us as well, to try to figure out the best way. Because as I say, we don't want to over inundate volunteers with different requests. But if people are willing to either have them delivered to you, or somehow delivered to a site, to a location where you could then go and install them, then that would be great, because obviously we just can't get out to all of the sites immediately, but we will be coming to a lot of sites for our Science Day events. So if you can't do it yourselves, which we can understand if you couldn't, then we'd be able to do it when we come to the site.
Okay, I'll contact Divya and maybe get them delivered.
Yeah, if they could be delivered to someone's house and then wheelbarrowed or taken one at a time.
Okay.
If you're keen, we'd love that to happen. That would be wonderful. Great. Okay.
Ours aren't numbered. Should I just put some spray paint numbers on them? Does it matter in what order that goes?
No, it doesn't. If you're willing to number them, it would be brilliant for us. We are actually going to, for Biodiversity Week this time, sorry, not to confuse you, but we're probably going to try and get around that, because we know that a few forests won't have numbers on them. So we'll probably make it that you only have number 1 as your option, and you just enter that for any tile. But if you're willing, Julia, and able to do it, and let us know. It doesn't matter which tile you number 1 to 6, but once we do know that they're numbered, we would be adding it to the system so that when someone returns to that tile, we know that in time, as we have repeat surveys to the tiles, that it was the same number.
Okay, thank you. We actually only have 4 as well. Does that matter?
Right. So again, 4 is better than none. It would be a matter of if there's a way of someone who could receive tiles to be delivered and then get them inputted, that would be wonderful. But if, you know, we understand if that's not possible.
Okay, thank you.
So, great. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to jump on, in the interests of time, to the pollinator survey. So this one is actually designed to mirror another survey that's run across the UK by an organisation called CEH, which is Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and they're involved in a lot of the citizen science large-scale biodiversity monitoring surveys, and they work largely with specialist groups who might be able to identify all the different species, but they actually designed this one as a survey that could be accessed by people without experience of particular species groups. But it does mean there's a few other little questions in here to help you, that I'll just talk you through, because we wanted to make it consistent. So in time, we'll be able to compare our results in tiny forest with other habitats, so hedgerows and gardens and parks. So we can see what does a tiny forest give that maybe some of those habitats don't, or vice versa, and we can make those comparisons. So as before, you select where in the forest you're doing your survey. Now this survey is quite a localized survey. You're looking at a small patch of ground in front of you, so you can only you can do it in the forest, in the middle of the forest, or at the edge of the forest. So you choose your location, and then we want to know a little bit about the weather conditions, because obviously that affects how flying insects are moving around. And you may find by Biodiversity Week we've added these questions into the butterfly survey as well. I'm not sure whether our IT team are going to quite get to it in time, unfortunately. So again, as with the butterflies, it's obviously better if the conditions are dry and not too windy to do a pollinator survey. If you were doing it in heavy rain, we would expect the results to be pretty low, but obviously there's still a sample, and 0 results are always important for science. We need to know when the species aren't there as well. So don't be completely put off if the weather is bad, but we'll hope that it's a clear sunny day. We give an indication of how windy it is. So all these factors mean that when we look at the data, we can understand maybe why numbers were particularly high, lower or higher on a given day. So it's a light breeze today. And on this survey, we want you to choose a patch in your forest where there might be some flowers, because obviously pollinators need flowers. Now we have some wildflowers growing often on the ground, which as long as they're not competing with the trees, we would recommend that you leave and don't weed out. But also the trees themselves will have flowering resources, and sometimes the flowers on trees are sometimes very different to the flowers we imagine in a flower bed, but they are still really important for pollinators. So as your forests develop, and maybe next spring, if you're a first-year forest this year, you might have some more flowering trees next year, and the year after, you might choose a very different patch to if it's in your first year. But we want to know, are you in a patch with no flowers? The flowers are in a small proportion of it, half the patch, or most of the patch? Again, helps us understand when we get the data what we're talking about. If you have a very high count and you've got lots of flowers, then that makes a lot of sense to us, of course. So that's the sort of information to fill in beforehand. And then again, we've got a guide in our resources to help you identify some of these groups. So some of the tricky ones really are maybe between the honeybee and a solitary bee. And we've got quite a lot of information on our guide about different things you can look for that help you make that distinction, not just these pictures here. So it's to do with the antennae, to do with the shape of the body, to do with the amount of stripiness on them. So again, there's a few tips and tricks to help you with that, and we'll be highlighting some of those during Biodiversity Week on the Facebook group and things to help you. These are the groups that we're interested in. So bumblebees, honeybees, solitary bees, they are a lot smaller than a bumblebee and smaller than a honeybee. So they're your smallest bees that you find. Solitary, not because you always see them on their own, but solitary because they don't live in hives and in communities. Wasps, hoverflies, again, we help with distinguishing between a hoverfly and a wasp. Often you can tell by their behavior because they really do hover and move around in a very different way to the wasps and the bees. Other flies, beetles are also important pollinators, but we're distinguishing here just between larger beetles, bigger than 3 millimeters, and really small little aphids and small insects that you might find on the flowers. And then finally, of course, butterflies and moths as a group are important pollinators as well. But we're not asking you to distinguish in this survey between different species. As before, other insects that you think might be acting as pollinators on your plants, you can record there as well. And then just at the end, so again, this one is a 10-minute survey. So we've often found when people are doing this that it's quite this and the butterfly time count is quite a mindful activity. It's quite a peaceful moment of sitting and watching an area of the forest and realizing how much you see when you actually sit and do that for any length of time. And people have really enjoyed it for that purpose as well. So I really do encourage you to take a moment before you start your timer and just quieten yourself down and just really enjoy looking and seeing what you can see and being curious. At the end of the survey, again, we'd really like to know how sunny it really was during that survey. So you've told us about the weather, but actually at that point when you were doing that survey, if the sun has gone behind a cloud or it was shaded by another tree, that will affect how much the species are moving around and how much you might have seen. So again, if you were partly sun and partly shade on the patch that I was actually watching, then tell us that afterwards. So again, those are sort of additional questions that make it comparable to the national survey, which was really important for us to, and will really add value to the data that you collect as we build up our database of this survey to be able to compare it with other sites. And then all it is for you again to submit, same as the butterfly survey, you say the maximum number of each group that you see at any one time. Okay, and press submit. So that is the biodiversity surveys for Biodiversity Week and whenever. Has anyone got any questions? And my question for you before we go is just, has anyone done anything like this before? Is this completely new? Does it feel, yeah, interesting, hopefully, and or scary, or oh, James, you seem to be speaking, but I can't hear you. You might not be talking to us. No, you're off mute, but we can't hear you. Type a statement. Is anyone here from a forest where they did some monitoring last year already? If their forest was planted in 2021, are you all first year forests? There's a vast majority, obviously, numerically of first year forests. We had 24 forests in the ground that we monitored last year, so it's a very different matter. Jenny, you're there.
Hiya, yes.
Hi, Jenny.
Yeah, we've done it last year. Got the school kids out. They really do enjoy lifting up and having a look at all the mini beasts and everything that they can find and things. So yeah, not actually done any butterfly surveys, but we found a whole load of stuff last year when we were doing some weeding, so we had the straw that you mentioned, and we've got lots of it growing, and we had a big sort of tidy up, but found all sorts of, we saw a newt and loads of spiders. I think, yes, I think we disturbed a spider's nest I mean, our site is close to some fishing ponds, so presumably the newt perhaps comes across from there as well. I don't know, do they need, I'm not sure whether because they do go in water, but yeah.
They need access to water to breed, but they spend
yes.
quite a lot of time on the land, so
right.
yeah.
So no, it is very good. I would suggest people starting up, number your tiles, because that's not what we didn't kind of think of that. And then when you go back, at least you know that you're using the same tiles, so get some spray paint or something onto that. I did try and mark ours with pencil. I have to confess, I'm a bit stuck. I ruptured my patella tendon at the beginning of the year, and I've not actually been able to drive, so I've not actually been able to go to our tiny forest because I do it through work. And I actually live about an hour's drive away, so unfortunately I've not myself been able to go. I think some of my team went over to have a look at it and keep an eye on it. And I know some people are, some ground maintenance people are helping out. I'm going to be doing a bit of weeding with them, managed to get on yesterday. But so I have to confess I've not been out, and I'm hoping I might be able to try and do something for Biodiversity Week, or maybe the week after.
You can get there and prop yourself up on a bench for an hour or so and just see what you see.
Well, it's all right, so it's just getting there.
Oh, bless you. I know it varies quite a lot for people, whether they're doing it as part of their job or they're doing it as part of their personal interest or with their family. So, you know, it's interesting for us to know what people's incentives are. So thanks, James, for your message. That's really nice to read, and I hope that it is that kind of opportunity for people to just get a bit stuck in through Biodiversity Week, but also use that as a sort of springboard to think about the other things you might want to do in your forest. And, you know, if you are talking to other people, encourage them to get involved. They don't need to have a login to the portal to be able to do the surveys themselves. So the links to the actual surveys will be available publicly, and you can share them with other friends, family, or colleagues who might want to get involved. And of course, we're always available on the forum or on Facebook or via email, just if you have any specific questions, and certainly we'll follow up the tiles conversation with those of you that need that. Otherwise, thank you all so much for your time this evening. It's wonderful to see so many people, and good luck, and we look forward to hearing how it goes. I think we've got another session like this one on the 19th, if anyone you know wanted to attend and didn't manage to, or if you remember a question you didn't ask. Otherwise, we'll be back with other topics later in the summer. Lee's a hand up. I think you're still muted. Oh. The survey patch for the pollination survey. Yes, I realise it's in the guide and I didn't outline that. Thank you. It's a 50 by 50 centimetre cube. So you're looking at vertical space. It's only a small area to survey. So you're looking at vertically as well as width and depth. Good question. I knew I'd missed something. You should, in theory, we'd like it to move to a point where the information that's on the survey is sufficient to do the survey without having to refer to another document as well. But we're still, all of this is still in development on the portal. So any tips or tricks that you, or things that you think would make things easier for you, please do feed that back to us as well. Great. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'll let you get back to your evenings.
Thank you for guiding us through it. Thank you.
I hope it was understandable enough, but really look forward to hearing how you get on. Send us some pictures of your mindful biodiversity watching.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye-bye.
Great stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I don't